Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the interesting creatures that I've created called the Kolsk. I've mentioned before in the previous two videos, I mentioned these creatures roughly, and I also mentioned that the Kolsk is very similar to the zerg from StarCraft. And you understand. So I'm going to go through the base information about the Kolsk, a little bit of their history, about their leader, and about a few of the creatures of the Kolsk. So first off, Kolsk is spelled Kolsk. It's pronounced Kolsk or Kol. The way I put it is Kol. Mention saying Kol and then SK, so Kolsk. The Kolsk, they're like kind of a hive mind. They're a hive mind of an alien-like parasite. They take hold of different plant life, different creatures, and they're all connected individually through the hive that they originated from. So there's kind of like the Zerg. Instead of all of one, it's kind of all for these individual hives, but then the queens, the ones that report to the leader of the Kolsk, which we will get to. So the Kolsk, they invade planets. The Kolsk originate from a small planetoid of pure Kolsk known as the Kolsk comet. When passing nearby to a planet, the creator of the Kolsk sends down a Kolsk pod, and a pod usually consists of one queen, one guardian, two stalkers, 1d4 plus 2 hounds, a siren, two spreaders, 4 detectors, and a jaws. Now, the siren, spreaders, detectors, and jaws are very similar to the Minecraft Skulk, in the fact that the sirens are essentially the shriekers. The spreaders are whenever a creature dies near, they can spread around. Detectors are essentially the skulk sensors, and the jaws was the scrapped idea for the skulk. But the Kolsk jaws are essentially a trap that when you stand on, instantly activate. So they're still creatures, but they're creature traps. So they can't really move very fast, and they're very hard to detect. So essentially, it's kind of imagine kind of mimic like they're hard to tell that they're there. There's a Kolsk parasite can spread to a living organism in multiple ways. Infected creatures will be infected for 1 month before the infection takes over and kills the host, creating a Kolsk infected, which is a humanoid, or technically any creature infected with Kolsk. If it's a humanoid, it becomes a certain stat block. If it's other things, they can become a different Kolsk creature. The only way to remove a Kolsk infection is either a cleric uses their destroy undead feature with the host in range, or the spell's greater restoration or wish is cast upon to remove the infection. After a creature that is already fully infected can be fully cured if both the queen of that hive that infected the creature is killed and the spell greater restoration is cast at 6th level on the infected creature. So if someone spent a month already of being infected and they're fully become a Kolsk infected, they can still be cured, but their body won't change back. Their body will still be the kind of disgust and violated. I actually do have an image of it. I actually do have an image that my artist made of a Kolsk infected, because this is a lineage. That's the word. This is a lineage in the book. Is a Kolsk infected. So I'm going to show this here. You can get these different kind of sacs and weird, kind of like bile sacs and these weird tendrils of Kolsk growing off of you. The Kolsk live in their own living terrain, which is also made up of Kolsk. This Kolsk is mainly orange, but it's reds and yellows and oranges. It's kind of all three of them. And the mossy landmass it is called Kolsk bile. So very similar to the Zerg with their stuff. All Kolsk creatures tend to live within the bile, but they are able to leave, except for the siren, jaws, detectors, and spreaders. Those 4 cannot leave the Kolsk bile. Now, if a living creature is killed within the Kolsk bile, then the creature of the Kolsk, the creature of the Kolsk will bring that biomass to their queen. The queen can then convert its biomass into another Kolsk creature, and depending on the size of the creature depends on how many points of biomass can be made. And when you're using the points value, it's 1 for one creature. So you would roll a d100 because it's random for what's made. They don't get to choose every time, otherwise they just get the very powerful things. Rolling a d100, 1 through 10 is a spreader, 11 through 20 is detector, 21 through 30 is a siren, 31 through 40 is a jaws, 41 through 50 is a Kolsk spinner, which is a spider, 51 through 60 is a mass, which is essentially like a Kolsk infected slime, 61 through 70 is a hound, which is pretty obvious what that is, 71 through 80 is a stalker, which is a tall creature and very lanky. 81 through 90 is the glider. I wonder if you can actually hear that train. Fun. Is a glider, which is a flying type. A flying one. Flying type. This ain't Pokemon. 91 through 95 is a Kolsk dragon, which is around the challenge rating of a young dragon, and it's also around that size. 96 through 99 is a Kolsk guardian, which is a large hulking creature. Then if you roll 100, you get the rarest one, which is a Kolsk storm. The Kolsk storm is the most terrifying one because it's just a massive storm of just pure Kolsk. Pretty shapeless, and it has 3 massive eyes on it, and those eyes are able to pull creatures closer into it. And once a creature gets pulled into the storm, then it captures that creature, makes that creature paralyzed, and it holds on to them before it could dump them out in the middle of the Kolsk bile section. The storms are terrifying. They're hunters. They don't do terribly much damage because their main thing is capturing instead of dealing damage. The key to avoiding the Kolsk is trying to stay hidden. And by staying hidden, I mean being as quiet as possible, because almost every single Kolsk creature is entirely blind. They cannot see at all. There's very few that can see. But they have good hearing, and this is why they have the sirens. So if a siren detects you for making too much noise or touching it, it'll go off, and that'll alert all the other Kolsk creatures within a certain area. Detector. If a detector does that, and then if a siren's in that area, it shrieks very loudly, essentially making the area a lot more. And if you set off enough sirens, then it'll summon the guardian to it. So it's the best way of doing this is to make it to have no need, trying to avoid making sounds. So if you have a spellcaster casting silence on your group as you're trying to go through this, it really helps because sound is your enemy. And if you end up getting in a fight in the area, you're going to make a lot of sound, possibly attracting more and more and more. Destroying the Kolsk usually isn't easy if it has had time to grow. A majority of the time, a Kolsk pod will land nearby to towns or cities that can be quickly dispatched before they grow too strong. Killing a Kolsk queen means the Kolsk of that hive can no longer reproduce, spread, or infect, and the Kolsk can be taken out from there, only able to remove their Kolsk landmass once all the Kolsk creatures have been killed. So the Kolsk are a little bit kind of sci-fi horror-ish, because I base this entirely off of the Zerg from StarCraft and the Skulk from Minecraft. Yes, there's 2 different crafts in there. I don't care. They're fun games. It's entirely based off of those 2 things to kind of make it like this horrifying alien thing, because in my opinion, I don't feel like there's enough of this kind of area of problem. So the leader of the Kolsk is this dude right here. We're going to show it up right here. His name is Cole Skinner. Kull, and then Skinner. He is the leader of the Kolsk. He also just goes by Kolsk as well. He's a humanoid demon who has created all of the Kolsk beings. His whole body is covered in yellows, reds, oranges, covered in the original Kolsk. He is the hive mind of all of them and can command all Kolsk beings as he wishes. So to get a little bit into the history of Kolsk, I'm going to give a little bit into some other creatures that are in this book. So within this book, there is a set of creatures, very powerful creatures, known as the Seven Deadly Sins. They are demons. And now Kolsk, the way the Seven Deadly Sins work, just to make it real quick, the ways that they work is when one of them dies, the creature who killed them becomes the new incarnation of them and gets their powers. There's a whole thing in the creature step in the creature section. There's these whole things about them, about a little bit of their lore, their specific weapons. They're powerful. Kolsk is the child of an incarnation of wrath and an incarnation of sloth, being such that makes him pity, makes him have anger towards his own laziness. But he's also lazy and he can't stop himself. So essentially, it just makes him self loathing, depression, which makes it really interesting when it comes in terms of working with this character. And when I was making this, I was my friend helped me, my friend was the one who created the Seven Deadly Sin lore. And when I was creating the character who worked out with this, I was trying to think how would this make sense to being a powerful villain when they're just always hating themselves. And then that's when I came up with the whole idea of Kolsk, and that every time he infects another creature, it lessens his own self hatred a little bit more as it's being spread out among many creatures. So essentially, he spreads it to make himself feel better, when really he still has hate. Really, he has hatred towards himself at his own lack of action. But then because of he did a little bit and did a little bit more, and he's feeling more confident in doing these things, but still feels like he doesn't do enough, which is why it's kind of come to the planetary conquest that it has. Now, this is the whole idea of making this whole Kolsk thing is you wouldn't just do this for a small thing because these are big, hard things to fight with. Kolsk himself, or Cole Skinner himself, is at the moment I'm still kind of fiddling with his stat block, but he's currently a challenge rating 40. He's ridiculously powerful because he can summon more Kolsk around him. He controls them all perfectly, and he's got many different attacks that are powerful, different things he can do based on Kolsk, and even infect people mid-fight and hurry up their infection rates instead of being a month to a few turns. So that's why he's a dangerous threat himself, but a majority of the time will send his minions to do most of the work for him because he's also sloth. He doesn't want to do the work himself. So we might get into some lore about Seven Deadly Sins. I kind of want to leave that for just book information that you'll see. But they are a lot of fun. They each have their own color, this is why Kolsk is red and yellow, because Wrath is red and Sloth is yellow. And just while we're on it, Pride is orange, Greed is green, Gluttony is a cyan, Lust is like a lavender, Envy is black. There is also another section of creatures called the Seven Heavenly Virtues. They all have the same color. They don't have any variations of themselves being, children, having children, as the sins do. And there is only three. There's only, at least in our original where we created, only three creatures that were children of sins, that children of two different sins, which we were calling demi sins. One of them being Kolsk, one of them being another creature that's in this book, and the third one in lore has not been made in the book yet. We're still kind of working how that would work out, but they're Dominion. They're Greed and Envy, which is honestly a really good villain because they are just absolute, just total control, pretty much, is what they would want to go for. But this is the Kolsk. They're interesting. So I'm just going to go over a handful of creatures real quick. Let's go over the Queen and the Guardian. So a Queen itself is a challenge rating 11. It's an armor class of 16, hit points of 192. It is blind, like all the others. But one of the neat things it has is that it can petrify a creature, or attempt to petrify a creature using a charisma save. It can also infect creatures via touch. Its damage is not terribly high. Its highest damaging thing is 2d4 plus 5, and it can make one of those attacks per turn, or two if it chooses not to use its scream, but its scream only does 2d6. So in terms of damage, it's not very high on damage, because the Queen is meant to be surrounded by a bunch of its minions and a bunch of the other Kolsk creatures. The real actual powerhouses of the Kolsk come to the Kolsk Guardians. They are, imagine them kind of like the wardens from Minecraft with a skulk. They're about that size, but they're the reds, yellows, and oranges. The Kolsk Guardian is a challenge rating of 21. They have an armor class of 20, hit points of 513. It has pretty high physical stats, but pretty low mental stats. It is resistant to lightning and cold, immune to fire, necrotic, and piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning from non-magical sources, but it is vulnerable to thunder because it is also another blind creature. Every Kolsk creature that is blind, or almost every Kolsk creature that is blind, is vulnerable to thunder damage. So if you are preparing for one of these things, you want to bring spells like Thunder Wave that'll hit an area that deals thunder damage that really can bring a creature down. Or if you got a paladin, use Thunderous Smite, because these creatures are also undeads. They're considered undead, so you do a lot of damage with Thunderous Smite, Divine Smite on these Kolsk creatures. So paladins and mages with thunder spells are very useful and often are the ones that are hired to take out a Kolsk infection as it's starting, if they know what they're if the people hiring know what they're doing. So the Guardian has its unique summoning ability where it can only show up after the Kolsk sirens have gone off 3 times in a specific hive's area. They have legendary resistances, and their damage is very high. They can make 3 brute attacks and 1 hypersonic screech. The brute attacks each do 4d10 plus 10, and the thing is, it also pushes the target. So if it's had to move up and then it can't get to it once it hits it once. So that is also part of the problem. The screech is a 1 creature target. One creature target, that's the word. It does 3d6 plus 5, but it also can frighten the creature if they fail a wisdom save. So it's very powerful up close. So if you want to take care of Kolsk Guardians, you usually want to take them out as fast as possible because of their high damage. But they also have to be within 10-foot range. So you'd want to stay at a range with this thing while also trying to deal as much damage to it as possible, take it down as fast as possible, or just get ways to remove its ability to attack you in melee. Then we're going to go for one more. Let's just scroll down and see what we get. Yeah, the Kolsk Dragon. I think that's a fun one a lot of people want to hear about. This will be the last one. This will be the end of the video. The Kolsk Dragon is, well, a dragon made up of Kolsk, or infected by Kolsk. They are challenge rating 15. Their armor class is 15 and hit points of 269. They're resistant to lightning, cold, and psychic, immune to fire, necrotic, and weapon damage from non-magical sources, vulnerable to thunder. Kolsk Dragon is blind, like all the others. It is a siege monster, so it deals double damage to structures, and it has 2 legendary resistances. Now it has a bite attack and a claw attack, in which on a turn it can do 1 bite and 2 claws, or it can try to use its Kolsk breath. Now, this is its draconic breath. It breathes out a breath of Kolsk spreading. All creatures in a 45-foot cone must make a Constitution saving throw. and it deals 5d10 necrotic damage. And if they fail it, they also become infected, and they take only half and don't get infected on a save, on a successful save. In addition, where it breathes out becomes an area of Kolsk bile, and it spreads the same way that the spreaders work. So the spreaders have a chart on how their spreading works. So when they do this, you would roll and see what you get on the chart. And the Kolsk breath recharges on a 5 to 6, like other dragon breath weapons. And with that, there is plenty of other Kolsk creatures, but I'm only going to go through those for now to keep the rest looking forward to be fun and to look through on your own. But essentially, long story short, the Kolsk are fun and they're really good to use as a main antagonistic force in a campaign. Like, because in my main campaign I'm running right now, this is a major thing, and that the entire surface is covered, and it only has a few floating islands left that are not infected. And it's going to be a major thing as they level up to start going down to the surface and start trying to clear out sections of this. So it'll be I think it'll be very fun to do as a main force, a main villainous force in a campaign. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and our next video should be about the Dragon Knight class. I think that's going to be a fun video.